The opinions of the guests and host are their own and do not represent the opinions of Ironclad, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
Well, it raises the question for me is you've been doing this for a long time, as in you were a law enforcement for a long time, which is several different presidents. Have you seen differences in the different presidents? I don't care, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter, but has different presidents kind of taken a different position on this? Or does it just seem kind of across the line the same, no change?
Another great question, Vince. I really appreciate your questions. Number one, I want to make something really, really clear to your audience. I've said this on national TV. I said it on Dr. Phil. I've said it in Congress. What I talk about is not a red or a blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue. Every American's being impacted. Every community is being impacted. Rich, poor, black, white, Hispanic. I don't care. I'm standing up for the American public. Now, what I will say is this problem has gotten worse over the years. Of course, we've had an opioid addiction for many years. That's not the fault of any one president. And we've had, this going on for many years, like methamphetamine has been going on many years, cocaine trafficking. American population has been addicted to drugs for a long time. Unfortunately, now it's not drugs, it's poison coming from labs in China and overseas. So it's gotten worse. But the main thing, not to pick on any one administration, but what's different now is we've opened up the border and have allowed the Mexican cartels to operate with impunity. Makes no sense for national security and public safety. So yes, the last administration had very sound border policies. We saw a decrease in activity. If you talk to some of the Homeland Security officials, they will tell you it was the most secure border in 40, 50 years. That being said, why this current administration came into office and immediately reversed the sound processes that were working, I don't understand that. I also don't understand this contradiction, Vince. The FBI director, I was at a conference the last month, downtown D.C., listening to him talk about the escalating threats to the national security of this country. He specifically mentioned China. He specifically mentioned post-October 7th massacre in Israel. But yet I wanted so bad to ask him, Mr. Ray, do you talk to your boss? Why the hell is the border then wide open? Does it make sense to a logical person? I didn't go to MIT or Harvard or Yale, but it's common sense. You don't open the border when you have this massive problem with the fentanyl poisoning on America and all this other stuff. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's, the border conversation is so complex because you have the asylum cases that some are legit, some are not, right? You have this really weird space that it's hard to understand that. Then you have the notice to appear. Since there's such an abundance of immigration, we have nowhere to house them. So they felt the humane thing to do was go ahead and release them into the country, which is confusing at times because we don't necessarily have all the systems from all the other countries to identify whether they have a shady background or some kind of past that we might not be wanting in this country. And then you have the drug issue. It's like multiple layers of confusion that's happening. And with the drugs, yes. It seems to, we can identify the cartels have a stronghold on this, and they have pathways throughout America and many different routes of travel through the highways, through road, doesn't matter. What are we doing as Americans to stop the cartel? So, okay, we know it comes from China now, but the cartel for some reason is getting so powerful. In my fear, and I don't voice my own opinion on this too often, I'll say here is, are the cartels so embedded in our own potential, I guess, government or something that we're afraid to stop them? I don't know what to even make of this. I think the same as you is like, I wish I had the answer, but it's confusing to see what's happening directly in our face.
Yes, I agree. And it is very complex. I don't have the magic bullet solution. I do have some ideas, but so let me just back up and tell you something, what happened recently, and then kind of set the tone. So I went to the DEA's largest law enforcement gathering with 130 countries ever in the history of DEA. It was in Jamaica in September. 130 countries came together to collaborate, cooperate about this worldwide drug issue that we have, okay? Guess what country did not show up? Mexico. So the first question is, how's it possible that the head of the DEA is showing all these dead kids in her Faces of Fentanyl exhibit in DEA headquarters? How's it possible that our administration talks about Mexico is our greatest partner, that we have on the southern border. Okay, fine. So why are they not being held accountable for not even attending a very high priority law enforcement operational conference? It doesn't make sense. But that being said, we also know, according to some studies, and I'm not an expert on this, I'm only going by what I've read, in that the Mexican cartels are the 5th largest business enterprise in Mexico, right? So logic would say, well, why the hell would Mexico want to shut down their 5th largest business operation when especially the drugs are being exported, the majority of drugs are being exported out of Mexico, not only into America, but the cartels are now operating in 30, 40, 50 countries around the world, and they're very smart. They are going to send their products, like cocaine as an example, to areas where they can make more and they have less risk of getting arrested or extradited to sit in jail in America, for example. So they're sending the cocaine at record levels to Europe through West Africa. They're sending cocaine, they're sending meth to other parts of the world because they're making historic amounts of meth, for an example, and drugs in Mexico. So I don't know, Vince, if you're paying attention to some of the historic seizures of methamphetamine, but we're seeing in America thousands of pounds at a time being seized in different locations. We just had 4 tons of meth in, I believe, Texas. We had 16,000 or 11,000, I can't even remember anymore, pounds of meth being seized at the port of entry in El Paso, I think it was, or Texas. But my point is that production's off the charts. The corruption in these countries, including Mexico, is off the charts. We saw that in the conviction of the FBI equivalent in Mexico, Genaro Garcia Luna, the FBI director equivalent. He's in jail now for many years for being convicted in New York City, federal prosecution. But so corruption's involved. There's big money. The cartels are taking total advantage because the number one point I want to make is criminals are going to take advantage of all vulnerabilities and all weaknesses. Well, right now, we've shown them the cards and they know how to take advantage, and they are.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think it's oblivious to the listeners that the cartel kind of runs Mexico. And I say kind of, I'm being gentle about that. It's one of the, it's one of those conversations where it's plato y plomo, right? Like silver or lead.
Yeah.
You either work for us or you get killed. And that is, you see it constantly through political leaders, through law enforcement officials, anyone that comes into a position that tries to make significant, serious changes to the cartel, you find them shortly after, usually dead. And that's the truth about that country, is that it's very scary because the cartel, because of the money they make, the position they hold, the power they have in that country, there's, like I said, saying it gently, there's a lot of corruption there, and they seriously run that country and some of these border towns.
Right, and that's why, Vince, I have been very outspoken, including testifying not only in federal Congress, but in the state Congress in Ohio in 2019 to declare the cartels as terrorists so we can use all tools of national power to wipe them off the face of the earth, because they are destroying more families in America than any terrorist organization in the history of the country. We've never had a terrorist organization kill so many Americans, right, that we're seeing just from the drugs alone. Forget about the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, the other criminal activities. So we have to treat them way more serious than they're just another drug cartel. Nobody should ever call them a drug cartel again, because they're way beyond drug cartels. They're narco-terrorists, they're terrorists, whatever words you want to use, but they're destroying not only, the way of life in Mexico, but here in America, they're absolutely causing chaos everywhere.